entertainment news update, and lots happened over the weekend. Of course, we had the release of two DC comic movies trailers finally coming for the Batman starring Robert Pattinson, and then also a new trailer for Wonder Woman 1984 with Gal Gadot and Kristen Wiig that also about over the weekend. People were talking about that. But today, for our entertainment update, I wanted to talk about the cover of the September issue for Vanity Fair. It's a really big deal, pretty cool stuff. I want for more people to get into the chat. Hey, Mark. Hey, Adam. Everyone, thank you for joining. Of course, we know that the September issue is the most celebrated issue of any publication, especially fashion and entertainment, that is published. It's super lengthy, super big, lots of advertisements, and a lot of fanfare goes into the September issues of, say, Elle magazine, Vogue. But Vanity Fair is doing something very special for their September issue, and they're putting a commissioned portrait of Breonna Taylor on the cover. Now, the Oprah Winfrey magazine did it this past summer and was met with multiple praise, lots of praise from people who've come to love the Oprah magazine. And Vanity Fair, sorry guys, gotta put my phone down. I had some notes, but we don't need them. Vanity Fair has commissioned artist Amy Sherald to paint this portrait of Breonna, and we know that Amy came into prominence after she did an illuminating portrait of the former First Lady Michelle Obama back in 2018 for the National Portrait Gallery, and she was commissioned to do this for Vanity Fair. Lots of publications have turned their attention to the Black Lives Matter movement in the vein of their own editorial voice, mainly Vanity Fair being entertainment, lifestyle, fashion, and somewhat pop culture. But what was interesting about this photo is that this self-portrait, is that Amy didn't have Breonna alive to paint her. She painted her posthumously and had to find a unique way to recreate respectfully Breonna's image in what her family would have thought to be her perfect image. And if you look at the portrait and get really detailed with it, Amy was able to recreate the necklace that Breonna wore and the engagement ring that Breonna will never get to wear again. So it's a very, very special portrait. And also the dress that Breonna is wearing in the portrait, Amy said that she went through a myriad of different colors, from yellows to oranges to greens, and landed on the aquamarine color of the dress Breonna is wearing in the portrait to commemorate the month of her birth, which is March. She was born on March 13th. And the birthstone for March is aquamarine. So she felt it fitting for Breonna to have that color in the portrait. Let's see here. AM guest report. Hey, Alex, Pablo. Hey, guys. I want to read something from Amy, because Amy, who wasn't able to really get involved in the Black Lives Matter movement publicly because she is immunocompromised. Of course, COVID-19 is still rampant across the world, so people are doing what they can to protect themselves from the virus. But she felt that this was her way of being active. It was her activism, and her way of giving back to the Black community was by painting this picture of Breonna for Vanity Fair. She goes on to say, I made this portrait for her family. Quote, I mean, of course, it was made for Vanity Fair, but the whole time I was thinking of Breonna when I painted it. So the issue is out on newsstands now, and you can pick it up. And again, it's Breonna Taylor on the cover of Vanity Fair, and people are still calling for justice for the woman who was 26 at the time, who was gunned down in her sleep with her fiance next to her. So it's a special moment. But the conversation is, like I said, these publications are turning their attention to Black Lives Matter. Viola Davis was also on the cover of Vanity Fair, and on that cover, it was shot for the first time in 37 years by a Black photographer, Dario Calmese. And I'm glad that we have these historically, I don't want to say white publications, because of course there have been people of color in them, but for them to put people of color on the cover and have it be the driving force of what that issue is about, especially the September issue, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. Viola Davis on the cover back at the beginning of the summer was a huge moment for Vanity Fair, because you have Viola Davis, who has gone on record saying, they say I'm the next Meryl Streep. They say I am the next this. They don't compensate me accordingly. They don't give me the roles of a Meryl Streep, of a Julianne Moore. When Viola Davis has an Emmy and an Oscar. So for these publications to now say, okay, we are being allies, this is their form of allyship by putting these amazing celebrities on the cover, by putting someone like Breonna Taylor who still hasn't had justice. The people who who murdered Breonna Taylor are still free. It's definitely a step in the right direction, and people always want to ask, what is the best way to be an ally? What does allyship look like? And there's so many different ways that you can be an ally. First, educating yourself on the issues that face people that are not of your experience, be it LGBTQ plus, people of color, marginalized groups. There's many different people who move through the world that don't have the privilege of their non-POC counterparts. Also, Google is a great way to become an ally, because do not lean on the Black person or the Muslim person or the LGBTQ plus, the trans person, to educate you on these issues, when in a time like 2020, at our disposal, as I say time and time again, we have these little things that work super fast on a really good internet, on very fast internet, to give you the information that you need to answer those questions for yourself. Also, listening. When you do have these conversations with people that don't move through the world as you do, listen. So much for myself, when I have, like, I'm a huge advocate for people that are of the trans experience. I listen intently, because that's the only way I'll be able to educate myself. A lot of people listen with the intent of speaking instead of listening with the intent of learning. And I'm learning that too. It's hard, especially when you talk for a living. You have an opinion. We all have an opinion. We all want to voice our opinions. We are very passionate about our opinions. So there comes a time where you have to just lean back and listen. Let's take some comments. Let's see here. Boom, boom. Alex says, Breonna and I share a birthday, and also, why haven't her killers been brought to justice? Hey, Alex, great question. I think that is the $1 million question. I think we want an answer to that before we want to answer to who's going to be the next president of the United States. Day over day, no matter where you go on any platform on social media, you have people from all walks of life calling for justice for Breonna Taylor, and it's perplexing why she hasn't been brought to justice. It really is. Where we can have whole talk shows and programs that have Nancy Drew situations on who's dating who and the next iPhone, all these things, but yet we can't seem to workshop getting the people who murdered this young girl, 26 at the time, was full of life. We can't bring her murderers to justice. And I do know that when we do, it's going to be a great day here in America. It's going to be a great day for the culture. But who knows how long that's going to take. And the conversation, I'm glad these magazines are still keeping the conversation present, still keeping the conversation buoyant of arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor, because I think we've moved on from the fever pitch that was BLM in May and in June, beginning of July. That's when it was very volcanic. It was very hot. It was, and I don't want to say topical, because it's beyond just being a topic of conversation, but it was that. It was very topical. It was everything. It was inescapable. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't turn on the radio. You couldn't watch TV. You couldn't go on social media. You couldn't clandestinely listen to conversations at Publix, which is grocery store here in Miami, without someone talking about Black Lives Matter, BLM, no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace. And so now that, of course, in human nature, we've moved on, life goes on, and not that we purposely are forgetting about Black Lives Matter, that we're purposely forgetting about fighting these good fights, but people live their lives. So for Vanity Fair and O Magazine, and I'm sure many other publications are going to do some sort of their version of allyship via their editorial voice. I'm glad, and I think the conversation of Black Lives Matter is going to continue, and I hope it's going to continue, and I think it's going to continue well after the election in November. So let's see here. Boom. Pablo says, I think there's a shift happening now and hopefully continues. I agree. Peter, hey, what's going on in Seattle? So yeah, that's what's going on in entertainment. I didn't want to come on and talk about the Kardashians or Kanye, because I think this Vanity Fair cover is so incredible. And the nuance, right? Alex says, great quote by Viola Davis. My whole life has been a protest. I love that. For Vanity Fair to lead with that as a headline was smart, but also so authentic to what Viola's been saying. You had John Boyega protesting in London, saying, I may not have a career. Yeah, John Boyega, I may not have a career after this, right? We saw that. That video went viral as well because he was protesting Black Lives Matter. And then you had a whole slew of celebrities here stateside. They're like, no, 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 no. We support you, man. Don't worry. But for him to have to actually say that, what does that say about our culture? That he has to be fearful of his career because he's saying Black Lives Matter. And I've said this time and time again, talking to other colleagues that are journalists and hosts and work in the industry and all different facets, and they were afraid of speaking up because what's happening now has been happening for decades. It's just now we have cell phones, we have people capturing it. We have the particle flow. Now we have the actual footage that's being exposed, and people are being just that, exposed. So now people feel more emboldened to speak up. They feel more, I don't want to say comfortable, but they're not as apprehensive or trepidatious to speak up of their experiences. Enter Ellen again. We've been talking about Ellen ad nauseum for the last month. You know, her situation, which last time we talked about Ellen here on the Habs Entertainment Report, I had said that the best thing for her to do is to go on her show when it premieres and address her fans. And as of this weekend, that's exactly what Ellen's going to do. Reportedly, Ellen plans to address her audience when her show debuts in September for its, I don't know, 20th, 19th season, I think. It's season 18, season 19. So, or I'm sure it's more than that. But so, again, you know, people are being called out and people are feeling more comfortable being called out. So for John Boyega to say, I'm going to have a job, it's like, bruh, we feel you, we see you, don't worry about that. But it's still a worry for people in all walks of life, not just entertainment, in private sectors, in corporate America. People are afraid for their livelihoods because the retribution and the retaliation, which is illegal in most states, which there are policies that protect against that, still happens. It still happens. But getting back to Vanity Fair and this Breonna Taylor cover, I think it's, I don't want to say it's a smart move because the intention behind it should be from a good place. It should, I'm sure it was, had to have been. And I'm sure there's people in the room, which there needs to be people in every room of all walks of life to tell our stories, whatever story that is. I'm sure people in the room thought, this is the right thing to do. How can we do this right? And commissioning Amy Sherrill was the smart move. The smart move, having a woman of color paint a woman of color, having a woman of color getting the nuance of another woman of color. And it wasn't just an easy process. She thought, what would a 26-year-old wear? So if you look at the painting, Breonna Taylor has a slit in her dress. She thought, that's what a 26-year-old would want to wear. She studied so many pictures of Breonna to get the contours and again the nuance of her face. And getting back to the color, the aquamarine, she landed on that color as well because it isolated her face. All you could pay attention to is Breonna's face in the picture because that color juxtaposed against her skin tone for a dramatic effect, for you to really hone on the essence of Breonna. Smart, right? That's how you do things right. That's how you get the job done. That's how you tell the story. That's how you honor and, like I say, exalt someone. So I think they got it right.